lantaarnvenster, zo heet het. Dat mag er.
Ja, mag.
Nou, goede tip. Lekker speciaal. Nemen we mee. Hey, welkom allemaal bij de 27e, zeg ik het goed? 27e Drupal Techno. En heel erg leuk dat we hier op bezoek mogen zijn bij VDMI in Rotterdam. Ondertussen wordt ook gestreamd, dus als er iemand kijkt, tof dat je erbij bent. Ja.
Wauw.
Ja, goed hè?
Wat leuk.
Ja, hey, het is een bijzondere avond om meerdere redenen, daar vertel ik later wel meer over. Maar we gaan even beginnen met het woord geven aan Frans.
Ja.
Hoe mag ik je eigenlijk noemen? Oprichter, directeur, eigenaar?
Alle drie.
Alles van VDMI.
Ja. Ja.
Dankjewel. Zo, dat klinkt opeens hard. Mijn naam is dus Frans van der Meer. Ik ben in 2001 begonnen met dit bedrijf. Dat is dus lang geleden. Ik heb inmiddels collega's die zijn niet in 2001 geboren. Die zijn later dan 2001 geboren. Dat is ontzettend grappig als je cv ziet. Ik ben begonnen als back-end developer en ik kan het nog steeds, maar ik doe het eigenlijk alleen nog maar op zaterdagmiddag. En verder kijk ik, hang ik een beetje de directeur uit, zit ik daar een beetje in mijn stoel te hangen en sigaren te roken, dat is wat directeurs doen. Hè. Van harte welkom op deze Drupal Tech Talk. Wij zijn echt een Drupal implementatiepartij. En ik voel me altijd schatplichtig aan de community, dus vandaar dat we jullie hier ook uitnodigen. Want zonder de community zouden wij dit werk helemaal niet kunnen doen. Dus vandaar dat wij zelf ook bijdragen, maar ook leunen op al jullie bijdragers. Dus hartelijk dank. Ik wens jullie veel plezier met DevOps en ik ben zo benieuwd waarom het een bijzondere avond is.
Meteen een van de redenen dat het bijzonder is dat we één praatje hebben van Matthias. Matthias, toch?
Matthias.
Ja. En de tweede helft is geen praatje, maar denk ik dat we de stoelen nog meer in een kringetje gaan zitten. Want juist DevOps is echt zo'n onderwerp waar iedereen verschillende manieren, verschillende invalshoeken heeft. Je kan het heel simpel houden, je kan het ontzettend complex maken. En ik hoop dat we van elkaar kunnen leren door ook straks gewoon wat dingen uit te wisselen en aan elkaar te vertellen hoe het bij jouw bedrijf of bij jou als freelancer geregeld is. Dus dat maakt hem alvast bijzonder. De rest vertellen we straks, want we gaan naar Matthias luisteren.
Ja.
Dankjewel.
Toch een beetje los van werken.
Ja, gaan we hem uitzetten. Of hoger zetten. Minder?
Je wil blijven staan en dan lekker doen.
Klopt wel. Dus de last van hebt staat er maar in.
Nou, van harte welkom allemaal. Ik ga eerst even zorgen dat deze weg is. Dan zijn we er. Werkt die? Ja, die werkt. Die werkt. Hij voelt zich.
Even kijken. Dat gaat wel heel hard.
Zo goed?
Ja, zeg maar iets zachter joh. 1, 2. Ja. Ja. Stoort een beetje, maar goed. We maken er wel wat van. Welkom bij. Ik denk dat ik hem. Ik ga hem heel even aanpassen. Want dit gaat.
Je staat achter een box, dat maakt niet uit. Achter of voor een box. Het is wel beter. Kan je hem waarschijnlijk iets harder zetten.
Heel
Ja,
erg
ja. Heel een beetje.
Komt ie? Ja. Oké. De game stond een beetje hard. Nou, ik ben Matthias Vasta en ik ben.
You promised to do it in English.
Oh yes, I did. I promised to do it in English, and that's no problem. Frans is the founder of this company, but I can say that I've been the longest sitting developer in this company. I'm a senior developer at VDMI for already over 10 years, and been part of this growing team and developing team, and it has been quite a journey. I've seen many things change over the years, and one of the things is seeing it grow from just plain installs, downloading a package, putting it on the web through FTP, to full builds and seeing a CI and CD environment grow. So also automated deployments and things like that. Besides that, I have a beautiful wife and I have 2 kids, and I am really interested in things that concern technology. If it is concerning DevOps, security, the Drupal development, it is going in a quite a broad spectrum of things. If you want to see what I have online, you can find me on Twitter. Just started to use Keybase for chats, which is very interesting from the security perspective side. And if you want to see things that I coded, you can find me also on GitHub. So this night we were going to talk about what DevOps is to us, and not in the sense of DevOps to do the full deployment, things like that, but how does Docker embed in the workflow that we have as a company. But to take a step back first, I would like to do a quick overview of Docker, just so I know that everybody is on the same page of a reference. I don't know who has used Docker before. So it's almost everybody. So most of you know what VMs are, right? Yeah? Okay. Well, this is where the difference is. A VM is loading a guest operating system, and on top of the operating system you are loading all the applications that you need and use to run the applications that you are building. So, for example, I would have a VM environment where I have my Apache, my MySQL, or all the other tools that I use to run my application. But Docker does it in a different way. Docker is not a virtualization environment. What Docker does is use the kernel environment that you have on your system, and on top of that it containerizes and allocates things that it needs just for one application. I know that for those that have been using Docker, there's also possibilities to use different kind of applications into one container, but that's a whole different topic. But what it does is it starts a container in which only that application has permissions and things to contain, and from that container can communicate to different other containers which can have different services or applications running. So that's on a small level what containerization does. But what are the advantages between virtualization and containerization? One of the main advantages is that there's a lot of overhead that a virtualization environment creates. So there's a lot of extra memory, there's a lot of extra space, there's a lot of extra usage from the resources, CPU, memory, all kinds of things. These things are not needed by a container. A container can use the memory of the system, but it is shared and therefore does not create a whole extra load which is unnecessary. Therefore you can, even within no time, start up new containers with all kinds of applications. In a perspective towards the future and towards deployments, there's the way that you can have applications, containerized applications with Docker, being spread over different servers, different hardware, if it is a VM in the cloud, or if it is hardware that you have in your office, or just on your machine. They all can run these same containers and communicate between each other. And that is where this is just an example of using Swarm. I needed a picture to show it, but there are ways that you can deploy applications, their containers, to different hosts. So that's just a picture of where containers and Docker can go. So what is this for? How is the picture for VDMI? Because we said, how did we embed Docker into our environment? I hear that more people are coming in. So our toolchain, the way that we work. I made the pictures, but this is what we are doing. First of all, we are a Drupal development company, so the basis of what we have is we have to start working with Drupal. It's a code base. But what does this code base need? It needs an Apache environment, for example, or an Nginx environment to run. Then we bring in Docker to use those services, surround it around Drupal, and then make that available. We host all our code for Docker and for Drupal into GitLab, and GitLab has functionalities that also makes it possible to work out from GitLab already with containers. So that's a huge advantage compared to other Git environments. Then we have different environments where we deploy to, and of course there's a whole roadmap of things that we would like to develop and grow into, which we don't have yet. But these are all ways, there are ways for the future. So how did we approach this? Sometimes Docker can, or whatever new technology can seem daunting. You know, how do I start with this? How do we go to work with this when I don't know how this tool works? And there's so many aspects that I can learn, but I would like to grow into it. So at VDMI, we always have the approach that we want to be pragmatic in how we approach things. We just want to make sure that things just work, and don't take all the time to know everything about it, but we just want to make sure that we can take the steps that we want to take and need to take to move forward. So we fold up our sleeves and just go for it. We know that things are not perfect and we cannot make them perfect always, but we just want to make sure that we always keep moving forward in the way that we approach things. So that's also what we did with Docker, because there's so many things that you can implement, but should you implement everything from the start? So this is the approach that we took. I already told that we have Drupal as our basics. That's what we do. But then we surround it with Docker. We created some containers that are using PHP and Apache, and then created our own simple bash wrappers to make sure that we can implement it in our development workflow. So we already have a way that we are working with things, but we want to move forward in that and created wrappers to just interact with Docker that is working locally on our system, because that's where we start, at our development environment. Then we created some custom templates, because there are so many different types of environment that we have, and that is one of the advantages that we got out of using Docker, is that there are so many different PHP versions also, and environments that we are communicating, working on with the amount of projects that we have, that we created templates to work with in different situations. So we have templates for Drupal 8, we have templates for basic Drupal 7 install, but also we've been working a lot with Kraftwagen to build our environments on. So we created a template to be working with Kraftwagen and have all the tools in it that we need. Then there's, with this, we had the possibility to also work with old projects that we had, and from the start, just say, okay, now we are going to Dockerize this, and pick that application, created the containers for it, and work with that environment which is specific. So, just to give a small example, there's no one that has Apache installed on their local system anymore. We are not working with that. The only way to be able to run an application is when you're using Docker in your system. So, it's not only the wrappers that we need. You know, you have to have a way locally to be able to contact those containers. Maybe in the past you had your local host and you set it up in such a way that you had like /project name to be able to run the environment. But now you have this Docker container, and how are you going to start to communicate with the Docker container that is running your application? There's this tool which is called Dingy, and Dingy is a Docker proxy which recognizes what kind of project names you have running, and it dynamically creates a reverse proxy that when you are connecting to this proxy container, passes the requests to the applications that are behind it, which makes it, for example, possible that we have a setup now where we have web.projectname.vdmi, and when we start the application, it just recognizes that that is the name for the application. And then what we did is, with all the laptops that we have developed desktop tools, which is automatically updated and deployed to all the laptops that we have, or the environments that we have. This way, everybody is working with the same wrappers, working with the same updates, and we are able to roll them out to our development team. The desktop tools contain the templates, and I will show some of the templates later. So besides that, you have the Docker Hub. The Docker Hub is the environment which Docker has provided, where multiple images can be downloaded from to start your Docker containers. So what we did is we started out, because we need Apache to run this container, by looking at PHP. There's an official PHP Docker image, and what we did is we extended the official PHP image with the things that we needed as a development team. Then we also took the MySQL image, and we used Mailhawk to be able to test mail within the application. So what we did is we put this in to our project. We start this Docker container which is called Mailhawk, and every mail that is being sent out from our application is routed to be delivered at Mailhawk. One of the challenges that we had in many situations with project is, how are you going to test email? Well, this allowed us to be looking into the email, where first this was not possible because we had to send it to the outside world, which we did not want. Then there's also a container we are using for PHP, myadmin, to be looking into the database. Some extras which in some circumstances or some projects we also need is Redis, or for example implementations of Solar into our Drupal application. And then there's also possibilities to front-end it with a Nginx environment, which we also did, for example, in an environment where we have, what do you call it? Where you have a JavaScript front-end, it is possible to load this through just a static Nginx environment and make it available, which is able to communicate with the backend environment of Drupal 7, 8, or whatever REST application we might need. And this allowed us to just package it in one project and run it with Docker. Now for the future, what I mentioned in the beginning, when we look at the cloud and when we are looking at deploying these applications with Docker, by starting out already in our development to use Docker, we can discover things that are not working within the application, fix them locally, and then when we deploy it, it's just the same way as we have it locally. So you don't get mismatches in environments, versions, and those kinds of situations. Where first you said, with me it works, now it is also working with you. And if it does not work with you, I can fix it because I have the same problem, and then I can just roll it out to you too, and then we both have a fix for the problem. So how are we using GitLab? There are three things that we are using GitLab for. One of the things is Git, obviously, and then GitLab also has the possibility to use a CI or CD functionality. Why am I mentioning CI and CD? The CI is for the integration part, the CD for the deployment part. When you are doing integration tests, you can just have steps and jobs that run the tests, fail when needed, and stop before the deployment. Or you can just have only deployment steps if that is what you want, and deploy it through the GitLab implementation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask if the term CI and CD are known to everyone?
Yeah.
And if everyone knows the difference?
Who
Just raise your hand. Who doesn't know what it is?
Who doesn't know what CI/CD
Please tell
stands
us.
for? Friends, you don't know?
No.
No?
Explain.
Okay. So, continuous integration or continuous deployment. There are two different aspects to it, because the continuous integration is the part where the agile method requires of us to not only look at the end if the result is good, but make sure that during the process of our development and while we are committing our code and testing it, that we always get the same result or progress result. And when we don't get that, our integration tests should say, I failed. This is not the result that I expected. And out of our integration, we can have that feedback back, which creates a quick cycle of improvement. With this, within the CI environment, you start to develop your tests, and your tests can say, is it possible to log in? Can I create a new account? Are these objects loading the things that I need to load, and is the response that I get back the thing that I expect? And if one of those tests is not giving the proper response, we can give that feedback back to our developers quickly, which makes it possible for them to fix it quickly before it is being deployed. Which is the next step, because we also, if that is our vision, want to do continuous deployments. Where an improvement, we want to roll out that improvement as quickly as possible to our clients. And the CD environment makes it possible to run the scripts that are needed to deploy it to a different environment. Are there any more questions to it? But one of the things is that you test it always in the same way. And we all have the same tests. So, because we are using Docker, it is possible to even run those tests on our environment locally and get the feedback back already if we would like to. And when I deploy my code, or when I commit my code, the GitLab environment immediately sees that there's an update, can run the CI integration tests, can run the CD if it has green light and deploy it to the environment. So that is how we use. When it comes to the Docker integration, the GitLab functionality has also a Docker registry. The Docker registry is a way to register images that you've built. So when you want to start a Docker container, you have to specify what is in the container, and that is specified through images. These images are built up out of layers of files, which together make up the application that is will be run. There's a lot of more detail that can be said about the Docker registry or Docker images, but we'll come at that when I give the demo, which is the next step. And that's always scary.
That's scary.
But yeah, I did it at home a few times, so let's hope that everything works.
That it works. Real Murphy.
So, and I have no backup, so it's the demo time. I've made it simple to make sure that the law of Murphy does not apply too much. What we start out with is a Drupal 8 download, and just go over the script just to explain what is going to happen when we are going to do this. This is not part of our desktop tools. This is just to show how it is possible for us to have a code base, and then when the code base is there, start to wrap this code with the Docker setup that we envisioned. So I have, let's see. So this is my empty environment. I only have the script here now, but this is where my new site is going to live. What we have here is first a download of the Drupal 8.7.2 version, and I'm going to create a site folder because the way that we have set it up is that there's a site folder which contains the site code, and outside of that site folder there's a data container or a data folder and a logs folder, which is being used by Docker to write out persistent files. So for example, the database, we don't want Docker to throw it away every time that we throw our containers away. Because what happens within Docker is that when you start a container, it creates a folder structure just for that container specifically. And it contains everything that is in that container within that part of your disk. But when you throw away a container, everything within that container is also thrown away. So to be able to store the data for a longer period, you need persistence. And that is what we do by creating specific volumes that are connected to a container. And we will also see that later when I show something of the desktop tools, which will come to. Then we have a small symlink. I'm going to set it up to be, the code is going to live in site /web. Because that is the way that we have our Drupal set up normally, because we have the web folder that contains all the web content, so also, for example, the Drupal site files, but all the code lives above it. It makes a separation between the code and the things that are part of the site, which is for security reasons also. So when we have the download, I'm going to unzip it, put it in the right folder, and then make sure that my permissions are set in such a way that my VW data is able to write to the sites folder. So now we are going to start it off. This is here. So my download is starting. It's unpacking. And then at the end we have folder. So when we look at it now, we have the downloaded Drupal file, Drupal zip file, expanded to the web folder, and inside that we have everything that is needed for a Drupal site deployed. But we don't have a site now. I don't have Apache running locally. I don't have a full install with the database yet. I only have the code, and now I want to be able to start my application. So to show you, what I'm doing with Docker PS is show myself what the applications, what the containers are that are currently running. So you'll see a whole load, because the applications that I have running now are still part of a project that I'm running. And let's see, here you see the names of the containers that I'm working on, and then there's a whole bunch. But we will see more containers after this. Let's see. So what I'm going to do now, I said I will do this and then that. So now I'm going to start to set up this environment to run with Drupal, with Docker. What we have in our desktop tools is a way that you can say, what kind of project is this? I already see that I made a mistake. I have to be in the... So now we get the same. But otherwise it's going to complain that I'm not within the folder structure for the site. So now I can make a choice what I want, and here you see the choices that we have, the templates that we have integrated into our desktop tools. And now I'm going to choose Drupal 8 and I'll call it the Docker demo, which is the project name that I'm going to use. Now I have a choice to say what kind of PHP am I running for this application. Now, we have set it to be 7.1 as a default, but it can also be 7.2, 7.3, for example.
Why did you choose 7.1? Or just because you didn't update it?
Yeah.
There were, yeah, I know.
So
We have the same issue.
so my choice is to use the default one. That's interesting. So now I'm going to make my choice for PHP or MySQL 2, and I'm going to say... Sorry?
There it happens again.
Yeah, it happens again.
Script nice.
Now, do you want to use Redis or do you want to use Solar? No, I'm not going to use Solar and I'm not going to use Redis. But that's okay. Because I already ran it before, I already have the some things that should be in it. What is happening is that we are creating a configuration file, which defines what is going to be in our project based on the things that we provided. It creates these files and then at the end makes sure that it starts the application. So here you see that it recreated certain containers and started the containers that are needed. So we have the mailhall container, we have a web container, PHP on admin container, and the database container. And we make sure that the one that is developing right away knows what the URL is that can be used locally to run it. So now I'm going to run it. Yes. So now we can run an installation, and everything that is happening for this installation is done within the container. So I don't have anything running locally. The only thing that I have running locally is the container setup. I'm going to do a standard. And I did not set opcode caching in my container, so if I had set that up, then it would be possible to work with that. So I know that the database names are based on the project name, but the password is generated within the project when I run my script. So let's see. So what we see now, I'm inside of the site folder, and what we did is we created a Docker folder which contains the Docker setup and how we are going to use this. We use Docker Compose, and Docker Compose is a wrapper for Docker itself. It's provided by Docker, and Docker Compose can say this is how the application is composed together. All these parts are part of this project, and when you start it, you have the whole stack that you need. And what we did is we have a template for this, and based on the things that we provided, the version that we are going to use, it created the whole YAML file that is needed for it. So let's see what is in the Docker Compose YAML. For those that have worked with Docker already, I know there's also a version 3, but we did not update yet to that too. For some projects we did because there are specific things, for example networking, which is hard to do with Docker Compose 2, but with the newer version that works better. For a web container, you see that we are using build. The build is run with the Docker file definition, and it is the building of an image that is needed for Docker to run the application, run the container. And for web, we built a specific image because it also contains the specifications, for example, how to connect to Redis or Solar or things like that. There are some extra tools that we put in the project to be able to work with that. Then we have the mapping of the volumes, which says if we have something locally, then it needs to be available at this path inside the container. For example, for www/http/html is a folder that is recognized by Apache already, and we embed it in it. Then we have the database dumps folder, which we can use to run dumps right from the web container and make it available to the local host. And then there are some configuration files to work with PHP settings that might be specific to the project. One of the things that we have where you can, which can be an obstacle when you start working with it is, I'm inside my container now. I'm working with my commands, and I'm not able to commit or push my commits from inside my container. What we did is we provided the SSH out socket, which is local on your host, and provided it also to be working inside the container, which makes it possible to even commit from inside the container. And here is the specification for it also. Then it says this container needs to be able to recognize other containers that are run, and when they are connected to each other, I want them to be available with this host name. So what I'm going to show here is many times, which is also the default, is it is localhost. But we have a separate container which runs MySQL, and we can say this is the DB host, and it makes it possible to connect to the other container, which it has its own IP address because it creates a separate network where the containers can communicate between each other. So here we are. I'm going down to show you this. This is what's being generated for this project specifically. This is unique, and I'm going to copy this for the example, and we'll see that it starts running. That's magic. First it takes a while. You hope so, right?
No.
So there it goes. Well, that part succeeded, so that's good. When this is finished, I'll show you that we are able to go into the application because it's completely installed. I'm going to give you a quick look at how we have set things up a little bit. So, in the example that I showed, I downloaded a Drupal 8 codebase. But in the way that we are working for our projects, we are approaching it a little bit different. We are using a skeleton.
Can you zoom in on that?
Yeah, I can. I have to see when it still fits.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah,
I see.
Even responsive. That's awesome. So we have a skeleton for Drupal 8, which you can provide to to Composer, the PHP Composer, to pull it in and run the script to set up a new project. And what we did is we already used it to specify what core we are using, what the instructions are for installation. There's a basic CI setup already, which specifies what kind of jobs we want to run to work with this project. For example, it does a build stage in which it builds the whole project, uses the Composer files, installs them, and then runs a installation, which you see here. Let's see.
What is this? Push script.
This is the definition that is used by GitLab, the GitLab CI. So the CI and CD integration that I mentioned before, it gives us the possibility to run our tests in different stages, and these stages contain jobs. So this is a definition of a job that is run. Here we see that it is the build stage, which is the first stage, and within the build stage we make sure that we run this script. So a container is started for this, and within the container it downloads the code, and within the code base that we have, we say Composer install and just do everything that is needed to install this project as a code base, to make sure that all the requirements can be pulled in from Composer and that we don't get errors on that. And after that, what we try to do is run our integration to do a full install of the Drupal environment. Within the web folder, there's not much, but what is specific for us is that we create a profile for every project that we use. So that makes it possible for us to contain only the custom code inside our code base, and all the other extra things are pulled in from Composer, because it's that defines in the log file that we commit. If you want to use this package, download this package, and not the other things. But it also keeps our Git repositories and the code changes that we have very small and maintainable to work with merge requests. If you would have to work with merge conflicts on a whole contrib module, because this person is using this contrib module and that person is using that contrib module with a different version, because in the meanwhile they updated something, then it is very hard to match these things. But when you use the Composer JSON definition, which says this project needs to be downloaded, this contrib module needs to be downloaded with this version, we don't get many conflicts for it.
It also really discourages patching.
Yes.
Which is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it discourages patching indeed, and what it gives the possibility out of the Composer JSON, which how we set it up, is that there's a specific definition for the patches that are applied. So you all, yes, so every patch that is being applied has at least one line that specifies, this is the specific patch that is being applied, and a commit that is associated with it, which always is handy that you can use git blame and see who committed that line of code. So that's the way that we are using a Composer to set up the project. This is our desktop tools, and we pull it in hourly through cron on every system. And then within that we have a bin folder which contains different wrapper files for commands that we are using. So for example, this it wraps around the containers. It tries to find out what is the project that we are in, and then connects to the container itself and executes the commands within the container. So you are not running that on your system, no, you are running the commands inside the container to work on the project. So we can use Composer install all the requirements from inside the container, or use Drush for all kinds of things to run within it. My time is going fast, so let's see. So here we also, for example, with Kraftwagen, we also have a skeleton that was being used to build that project. Projects like that.
Which we used.
Yeah, we are moving to Drupal 8 now. So
Yeah, of course. We used it as well. Okay.
let's see.
It was nice.
Review the template. Back to the setup. So this is my site name. Docker demo. Test@example.com. It's okay. Admin. I know it's not secure, but let's continue. So are there any questions already? Or finally, here we have it. This is our Drupal 8 installation running inside the container with everything that we need. And when we use the skeleton, there are things that we can include from outside already, which don't belong to the standard setup that Drupal has. So we can build a whole skeleton based on our requirements for every project. Let's see. Oh. mentioned Docker dependencies or PHP dependencies. One thing that we found very useful also within Docker is that because PHP differences are following each other more rapidly, we've had a few versions of PHP 7 in the last year. It made it possible to run a update on Composer to our Composer JSON and just change our Docker file to a new PHP version and have all the dependencies matched to it. Because Composer itself also checks this package can work with this version or with that version, and now because we have the right PHP version within our project, we can run also the right updates on the whole Composer definition.
I think your CI test, you said ignore platform requirements.
Yeah, we have to update that. Yeah, but locally I don't do that. No. So we have many projects and many different environments, which makes it possible to run those where we were not able to do that. But also our theming, we have different projects now, for example, that use Blended, that use Yarn, or other tool chains to build our themes, which also use specific versions of Node. Or specific versions of engines that are used within that, and now we can just contain that in one container and do the whole build chain inside that. Very quickly, for the future, we want to apply this to every part of the state of the way that we are working. So from development, testing, acceptance to production. There are projects that we have it already on, but there are also projects where we would like to have it more tightly integrated. But we start to develop that already with the experience that we have with other projects. We have still 10 minutes left for this hour, and I've mentioned a lot of things how we are using it within our company, and maybe there are questions based on that.
You say that you use CI/CD. If you make a project, how many tests do you write and what kind of tests?
Right now they're more build tests. So is it possible to build everything and install it? But there are also tests that you can write, but we don't use it very often to do unit tests or user behavior tests, but that's not something we use very often.
Why the projects are too small, or?
Yeah,
oh.
that's a very great aspect of it, because there's many times there's not much time to it to do those kinds of developments. So that's a part. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so you're saying you're looking to do things like this on production as well. But at least in our experience, like many clients have like different hosting environments and different requirements. So perhaps not all of them are even able to run Docker on the production machine, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So what is your approach if your whole build stuff runs on Docker and production does not?
That's okay for us. We try to match our Docker environments to their production. So, but then at least we have everything on our side within the team managed, which is a great aspect of the whole project. If we are not able to work with each other on the same project and the same code, or have conflicts all the time, then you create problems. So now we have that settled, and what we try to do is have as many clients move over at least to a way that we have access to the machine itself, and that we can make a choice or on our part because they say, no, we have infrastructure, here's a server, just do with it what you need. And we can say we run Docker on it and we manage it. And with other clients, they say the IT department is a little hesitant on using it because they don't understand it, and we don't do it. But with others, they say, you know, let's take that step and we work with you to make sure that we have the monitoring on it and things like that. So there are different approaches depending on the client that we have. Yeah.
If I'm correct, you're using Ubuntu Linux?
Yeah.
Are all the developers on Linux?
Yeah. All our developers are on Linux. Yeah.
Cool. Because in our experience, Docker and macOS is a very slow performance.
There's indeed some problems when it comes to performance on Mac. I've come across several options. It mainly has the main problem for those that are not familiar with it is that when you're running it on Mac, it has to create a virtual machine because it doesn't have the environment locally to run its own kernel to run your Docker containers. So it creates its virtual environment, and within the virtual environment it creates Docker containers. And then your local host has to connect its file system to the virtual machine, and there's a bottleneck between that because reading and writing from your system into that file system is very hard. So then you have to take a different approach on how you are going to move over the code to that VM to work with Docker containers. And there are ways to update to work around that problem, but they're not perfect.
We used Docker Sync, but I found it to be buggy. Sometimes it stopped working, and you could just see your updates in the browser.
Then if you have development environments within the company and your developers or your themers most of the time, where we have seen that it is necessary to run those applications, are familiar to connect to it and have a shared, just the source code being shared to it, but not the whole project, and have that synced might be a possibility. But we've eliminated that by only using Linux.
We've had the same problem with a lot of Mac OS clients, but we've got working solutions by limiting what is synced on the file system. That is the biggest gain. And Docker for Mac, even without Docker Sync, has defaults which share much too much. You can eliminate all the sharing and just pinpoint it to bits of code you need to sync. So no vendor folder, no Drupal core folder. You don't need those.
True.
And by default they're synced.
Yeah.
That's loads of files.
And when it needs to read all those files from a shared environment, then that becomes buggy, not very slow. But when you only have, like, if you would only map your profile, because that's the only custom code that you're running, and all the other stuff is being generated within the container, we now have a setup where we have everything being built and then it's also locally, which makes it very easy to inspect everything. But it doesn't mean that you have to have everything on your local system. So that is a way to work around it. Yeah.
So you're saying that you have actually 2 copies of Drupal core?
No.
Okay.
Because Docker makes a mapping from your local system to the container, it's the same file. Yeah. But when you're using it on a Mac, then because of the VM, it needs to mimic it.
Yeah.
And there are certain systems where it makes a copy, and other systems where it's a stream of the original file.
Right. Okay.
And if you can remove a lot of the streaming and reading from the files that you have locally and just do it within the container on the VM, then that eliminates a lot of lag. Yeah.
The eliminating much of the files that need syncing, and Docker has an option when you sync files to say which is leading. And for stuff in the container, that if changes in the container need to be quick, because that's where the actual application runs. Where if you write a file to the container and you want to see it on your local file system, it doesn't even matter if that takes a couple of seconds or even minutes so you can, there's a setting in each share where you can say do it first locally, first remote, or keep it completely in sync. And that also is a big difference for Mac users.
Yeah, within our template you saw that there was a Docker Compose file which had a -OSX, and that is something where we tried to work around certain problems to run a project in a different way for them. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so you showed your your directory setup with the data and the logs directory. Is that all committed in Git, or where is your Git root?
The Git root is, I'll show you. This is my Git root.
We can't see.
Nice.
Oh, sorry.
Nice and clean.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Not this one. Where is it? Yeah, this is it. Is this it? No. Yeah. This is it. This is what we commit, and the rest we skip. We don't commit our data directory. We don't commit our log files. The only thing that we commit is this. But within the, let's see. This is the project that you saw running. Here I have the site folder. Here you see that we have the composer JSON and the log file, the Docker folder, which you also saw in the other one. But here is the vendor folder.
Yeah.
And some people would without knowledge, say I commit everything that I have within this folder. But what we did is, and that happens many times, is you put it in your git ignore. Because you don't need it in your whole Git repository. You only need the things that you created, because all the other things are already out there.
Yeah. Well, we can discuss that after dinner.
Yeah. There are aspects to deployment where I would say it is not the best way to run a Composer install on a remote system. I would say that you run a Composer install within your CI environment, create the Docker image that is associated with it, and then on the remote system connect to your own registry to pull in the data, which makes it possible to make sure that you have the same copy everywhere without deploying the code, but you deploy the image. But that's a different topic. Other questions?
One more.
Yeah.
I saw you use a router for Docker and then some host names.
Mm-hmm.
How does your local machine resolve those?
That's by Thingy. Thingy is a tool which looks at the service names which you have in your Docker Compose. And those are mentioned within, when you do a Docker inspect on a container, you see the names, and it recognizes the names. And we have a environment file which says this is a project name, or Docker Compose knows what the project name is, and based on those two, it combines it into one name.
Yeah, but how would that still doesn't connect to your local host resolver?
DNS the DNS mask.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
all the other things are
Yeah.
within Docker.
Yeah.
So they're contained, but DNS mask needs to be installed on your local machine and configured.
Yeah.
And that's separate from the whole Docker process.
That's true.
That's the one thing that always kills it in my setups. Oh yes, this all works out of the box, except you need to install that.
Yeah, that's why we use laptop images.
Yeah, so you point the wildcard host name to your proxy Docker,
And then it works.
from there
yeah,
it works.
yeah. Right.
That's,
Yeah, same trick I've seen pretty much everywhere.
And but you can also do it with a full qualified domain name, which is pointing to your local host, which you have within the system.
This is what Lando uses out of the box.
Yeah.
That works without any, as long as you have internet. Then you go offline, it doesn't work. There's always,
Okay. There's a lot to talk about. We can do that among each other. That's awesome. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Matthias. Do you do a talk now? Oh. Thanks, Matthias. Who uses Mailhawk? Who has sent a client like 500 Efteling kaartjes every day, just while testing? That's why I love Mailhawk. We did that once, well, maybe twice. That's why we always have Mailhawk in every project. Because I don't want to pay for the 500 Efteling kaartjes anymore. We have pizza now, and a whole lot of them.
Okay, excellent. Matthias,
yes.
Thank you on behalf of the Tech Talk organization.
Thank you.
Something for you. Yeah, pizza. Let's do it. Yay.
Awesome. Enjoy.
Let's eat beef.